All right, our next presenter is going to talk about the upstart and up-and-coming protocol, SRT, and he is from Wowza. Barry Owen.
Hi, I'm Barry Owen, Wowza Media Systems, and I'm here to give you a 10,000-foot view of SRT. First of all, I'll start off with an overview and a brief history of SRT. It's actually been around probably a bit longer than folks think as a proprietary protocol from Haivision. Real high-level view of some of the fundamentals and some use cases, and maybe most importantly is where it is now and where it's going, and also a call for action for you to get involved. As you know, it's an open source protocol now, so we want contribution. So SRT was designed to deliver high quality, low latency video across unreliable, potentially lossy networks. We need to account for packet loss, we need to account for jitter, fluctuating bandwidth, and ideally you want to maintain the integrity of that stream from contribution to the reception. So high quality, low latency, firewall traversal is important, the ability to encrypt or secure the stream, and lastly, we want to encourage adoption through open source. Like I said, this started as a proprietary protocol, but it came to the point where Haivision approached Wowza and said, "Hey, we'd like to collaborate with you on this," and we raised the option. You can try to go take this through a standards body, or maybe the right way to do it initially is to go open source, and let's try to drive adoption, perfect the format that way. Some further design targets here. Obviously, it's based on UDP with automatic requests. The transmissions had to be fast. They had to be selective in a sense that you need to be able to tune it for latency or quality, and in some cases, dropping packets is okay. It's a real-time pipe. Sorry, it's a real-time pipe. Now, I'll talk about this a little bit later. It's potential to send whatever you want down the pipe, so keep that in mind. While not currently, FEC compatibility was a design goal, and this was mostly focused to be a point-to-point and a contribution format. It's not contemplated, even though it's probably possible, particularly with some of the advances in transports, but it's not meant to be from edge to consumer. A brief history. So the concept has been around since late 2012, and that was Mark and some of the folks at Haivision were looking for a way to solve these problems. So at IBC in 2013, they had a prototype that was demonstrable of an end-to-end SRT connection, and they showed the famous demo a lot of you have probably seen with the rally car, and it's got a bunch of packet loss, and you see a regular transport stream getting all blocky, and you see the SRT stream looking perfect. So very great visual demo and understanding of what happens under the hood. Haivision then shipped their first version of an encoder in 2015. And mid 2017, we began talking to Haivision about this format. Did we want to support this format? What would happen if this gained more acceptance? And that's when the move to open source happened and was officially launched at NAB in 2017 as an open source project. And at the same time, the SRT Alliance was formed. So since then, tons of adoption. There's over 200 members of the SRT Alliance. There are real-world deployments where you can demonstrate success. There's a lot of great open source tools that have adopted it and supported it in one way or another, including things like VLC, GStreamer, and FFmpeg. Now a little bit about some of the things this solves and how you can address them, right? So, you have your contribution device and you have your destination device, and you're sending packets over the network, and packets will in fact get dropped. So you have this selective retransmission, and you can control this with the amount of buffer on either side. And the sender keeps the memory the same amount as the receiver, and they're configurable in the sense that you can decrease the buffer on one side or the other, and things like that. So one of the important things is what we'll get to in a sec is the stream integrity of a stream when you lose packets. Even with all the packets recovered over an unmanaged, lossy network, i.e. the public internet, your destination stream isn't necessarily going to match. And video decoders don't like that. They don't like erratic bit rates. They don't like erratic frame rates. They certainly don't like packets writing out of order. So one of the problems that SRT solves is with selective packet reordering, timestamping, you can reconstruct this to create your existing shape on the outbound side. So you've got the benefits of recovering that from your bandwidth, from your jitter, but you also have a happy decoder on the other side. Security. So AES 128 and 256 supported, uses ATS counter mode. The passphrase and the secret key exchange and things like that are outside of the bounds of the protocol, so they're application layer dependent. I'll talk about some alternate ways of encryption that are upcoming in a newly released version of SRT in a sec. So this is a brief, super high-level view of the handshaking process and the notion that when you first connect via caller-listener protocol, there's a handshake, and you can exchange capabilities there. So you get to exchange things like, telling it you're encrypted, telling it the port you want to talk on. You can talk about the capabilities on either side. So and that's important for things like firewall traversal and things like this. And it's also it gives you a way to measure RTT times and acknowledge buffer sizes on both sides. And that turns out to be very important in the quality latency trade-off. So as far as how it retransmits packets and how it best leverages the bandwidth it has available, the goal is to not to just burst all the packets out at once and overblow your bandwidth ceiling. So what we try to do with packets is when you have loss and you need retransmission, we try to pace the packets out over a longer period of time to eliminate large bursts that potentially would cause more packet loss, which potentially leads to that snowball effect where you have a bunch of buffering on the sender side ever growing because it has to keep retransmitting things. So ultimately, you can specify the amount of buffer you're willing to sustain before you just drop packets and move on. But this aims to preserve that bandwidth for retransmissions on average over time. Some of the key use cases for SRT. So, first mile contribution, as you can imagine, many scenarios where you have a mobile encoder, a remote encoder, a camera with a backpack, where you're sending a stream over a very unpredictable network, and you need to get it to your origin. SRT really shines there as far as a protocol that leverages the maximum bandwidth, gives you a clean, low latency stream for ingest. And one of the use cases we see at Wowza where this is very prevalent is on the mobile side, either with a mobile camera and potentially a cellular device, or from actual phone for user-generated content, or even now more often in some use cases, professional-generated content coming from old devices. On the distribution side, and this is more of a point-to-point distribution. So, you're pushing content over the open internet from a broadcast front end down to your affiliate in a way that could potentially be much, as reliable but much cheaper than, a dedicated point-to-point solution over fiber or MPLS or, something that satellite. for maybe the content's not as mission critical, maybe the content's not as high value, and it doesn't justify that. Or maybe you're just in a place where you can't do it. Maybe you're doing remote production at a racetrack in the middle of Kentucky, and you just do not have that capability to send something over those links. Super quick, this is a little bit more of architecture than architecture, so I'll go quickly. But real life use case, Al Jazeera's newsroom in the cloud, they take inputs both from mobile, from real cameras, and they've had great success using SRT to ingest that into a series of platforms that happen to run on Azure. And even then within the Azure framework, they've done point-to-point to get things in and out of the network back to their home base. It's been a very effective way for them to minimize the use of those expensive links. Another case in a multi-scenario, which potentially similar to this one, is overflow rooms in venues, external overflow rooms in venues that need a low latency feed of the action. Also as an ingest into a distribution mechanism such as Azure or any other cloud service for delivery at scale. Now technical highlights and roadmaps. What are we doing? Where's going now? So one of the key things introduced with SRT 1.3.1 was the notion of stream multiplexing. And this is very useful where you either want to send different formats, different streams from point to point, and potentially maybe you can only have access to a single port or a single UDP channel. You may want to have a bunch of things going through the firewall or things like that without having to completely open new ports or dynamically open ports in your firewall as you go. So this allows you to effectively give the stream an ID, send it all in, shove it down one single connection, and then demux it on the other side and pull out the relevant streams. In SRT 1.3.2, we announced an important new feature which allows the ability to enforce encryption on a listener waiting for it to call to command. So when the service is openly available in the cloud and you want to encrypt it, this feature would mean that unencrypted streams are rejected. So this is great for a listener because it prevents the ability to effectively block or deny a service attack on a port by sending unencrypted streams. And that's a great feature for people like Wowza, who we tend to function as an origin server. We have an open port we're sitting there listening on. We want to be able to reject unknown things very quickly. SRT 1.3, I mentioned this briefly. So now there's now a crypto API and a model where you can add different encryption libraries to SRT. And the initial one is the support of embedded TLS as a library. And I do want to point out, SRT 1.3.3 was officially announced just last week. So that is now available. I encourage you to go look at that if you're interested in either that encryption library or even rolling your own library into SRT. One of the biggest asked for features in SRT since it started was the ability to have a plugin API for third-party developers to extend the functionality. This is going to be available in a development branch very soon, definitely by the IBC timeframe, if not sooner. And basically, you will be able to now add protocol features. So the first one, which was one that was much requested, which is for error correction, and there will be a plugin, an example plugin that I believe is already underway, if not ready, as part of that branch. So in certain cases, where it's rarely, particularly in very long distance links, FEC can give you slightly lower latency than the ARQ style of normal SRT. It also gives the ability to do both. So again, a very requested feature from broadcasters in particular looking to use SRT. And now you'll be able to not only use that one, but add your own. There also is, SRT also includes a file transfer mode, and that is a work that we continue to improve so that we have better performance for file transfers from point to point. The original protocol was highly optimized for streaming, and the High Vision folks added the ability to do high performance file transfers, I believe, is in 1.2. Next up on the 1.4 release is more things around the world of redundancy and different things. So this is socket group redundancy, and it allows you to essentially from a single point to send a stream over 2 different routes to a receiver, and that receiver can then interleave the packets it receives based on the first arrival time and reconstruct the stream over there and account for even worse network connections, faster routes, changing routes to really optimize for latency. With congestion and unavailability, things change on the internet regularly, so having 2 separate routes can often be ideal. This also allows for the use of main and backup links, as well as bonded sockets if you're wanting to bond sockets together for potentially to create more bandwidth or something of the like. Also, reliability tuning will be much simpler now. You can really have a tuning, and this will vary things with buffer size and retransmissions parameters to allow you to optimize for latency or quality depending on your use case. While SRT was originally designed for super low latency with the best quality possible, you can crank your buffers up if you're willing to adjust, accept a little bit of latency and have, even higher quality streams going through with less packet loss. You can now prioritize the streams in the multi-stream scenario we discussed earlier, so that if you have a high value stream on one of those streams that you're sending 4 or 5 streams over a port, you can give that one prioritization to arrive. And even down to the packet level, you'll now be able to prioritize packets, and you'll be able to tag a packet with a higher priority, whether that's a keyframe or if you want to make sure the audio always gets through. And enhancements to the bidirectional metadata and control data as well for a better metadata experience end to end. So brief, giant picture of all the folks involved. Really encourage you to get involved where you can. There's tons of information on the GitHub. All the release notes for all the versions are there. There are tons of documentations. There's a technical spec that is very well done. It's being treated as an open source spec. You can add to it. You can submit pull requests against it. The more people who look at it, the better. To date, there's been 400 pull requests on the repo, and 5 versions have been released. So we encourage people to help us make it better as we go. Any questions?
No questions, anybody?
Sweet.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much.